Pat Robertson spoke out on the new wave of jihadist violence in Iraq, and he surprised pretty much everybody because he actually says some things here that make sense.
What we did, and it was a great mistake to go in there. You know, I had on this program, the man who wrote a book said he was Saddam's bomb maker, and he said to us and to all of our audience, Saddam doesn't know how to make an atomic bomb. He doesn't know how to do it. And so to sell the American people weapons of mass destruction, he had WMD and was getting yellow cake out of Africa and all. There was a lot of nonsense. And we were sold a bill of goods. We should never have gone into that country. As bad as Saddam Hussein was, he held those warring factions in check, and he contained those radical Islamists. He did not permit them. And the same thing with that wicked dictator over there in Syria. He was with the Ba'ath Party over there, and he held down the Muslim Brotherhood and brutally suppressed them. But that kept that strain from getting loose. Now it's loose. So it seems like to me what's going to come out of that, the Kurds need a country, and they're going to get one. They just took over their old capital, they claim, big oil-rich place in Kirkuk. And the Sunnis want the center of the country, and that Maliki deliberately suppressed the Sunnis, persecuted them, and he cleansed the army, and in so doing took out the leadership, and the army was leaderless and just fell all apart. So we've got to fix it? No, it's too late to fix it. It's unfixable. And those simmering animosities have been there for centuries. And they will continue to play out until such time as the Lord brings out of Babylon some evil antichrist or something.
He was exactly right until the end. He had to say, and the Lord is going to bring in some antichrist out of Babylon or something. No. There is no Lord. There is no antichrist. Babylon doesn't exist anymore. He was doing so good. But everything else was right, man. Other than the religious, kooky garbage at the end, everything else was fairly factual. He said, look, we should not have gone into Iraq because it made the situation worse. True. Saddam contained the jihadists. True. He was a secular leader. Granted, he was brutal in many respects, but he also contained the extreme jihadists that, by the way, they weren't even in Iraq when he was leading it. It was after he was toppled that they came in, okay? Assad, too, in Syria is like, look, Assad, he's a bad guy, too. He's a dictator. He's killed a lot of innocent people, but he also killed a lot of the right people, jihadists. Over 50% of the rebel movement in Al-Qaeda in Syria are Al-Qaeda and jihadists. It's ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra Front. These are all jihadist groups, okay? Only some of them are secular, the FSA, some of them. But he's right that, look, Assad contained jihadists. He says, look, the Kurds are in the north. They want their own country. That's factual. That's exactly right. They do. And by the way, in Syria, it's the same thing. The Kurds in the north in Syria are also fighting Assad, and they kind of want their own country. And then he said, well, the problem is when the U.S. went in there, when they fired the entire government and fired the entire army, they kicked the Sunnis out of power, they put Maliki and the Shiites in power, and now the Sunnis are pissed off at Maliki, and they're moving in on Baghdad. That's right. That's totally factual. I'm amazed. Honestly, here's the crazy thing. Maybe once in my life I've heard a reasonable thing, or maybe twice at most from Pat Robertson. Once when he said we shouldn't be locking up people for smoking weed. That was awesome. And then he did one other. I don't remember what it was, though, at this moment. But this is the most sense I've ever heard him make. Obviously, the end part with the Antichrist is like he had to throw in something stupid because he's Pat Robertson and he's a fundamentalist. But, the other thing he makes sense on is he hates creationists. And he says, you're being stupid. You know, he says he thinks the world is 4.54 billion years old, so he's right on that too. But three things. This is probably the smartest thing I've ever heard out of Pat Robertson. And look, Joe Biden proposed this back probably in the early 2000s or late 1990s. He said, Iraq is really three countries. What we have is we've drawn artificially one country and called it Iraq, but you have the Kurds in the north and two separate areas for the Sunnis and the Shiites. And that's right, and that's what Pat Robertson is hinting at here. So you know you're in a bad situation and a bad circumstance when we have establishment Republicans in the U.S., both Bush and Cheney and them, but even today, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and the rest. When Pat Robertson makes more sense than they do, oh, sweet Jesus, you know those guys must be so wrong.